All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, brothers and sisters, welcome to We Act Radio, broadcasting live on the radical side of Monarchy Avenue, the Annabelle Nation's capital, the Foothill, the Cedar Hill, the alignment of Costia, Frederick Douglass home, the Bicentennial. We are going to get started with the man who made the decriminalization movement of marijuana in the nation's capital possible, Adam Ettinger from the DC Marijuana Justice Coalition. We're going to start there because we're here to address the draconian efforts of DC Council to crush small businesses at the behest of big marijuana business in the nation's capital. We turn it over to Adam Ettinger.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Ramon. And thank you for We Act Radio being a voice for drug policy reform for many, many years. What I find very interesting is that the authors of this emergency legislation, namely Phil Mendelson, the chairman of the DC Council, historically was a kind of a drug warrior. He's evolved just a little bit every 4 years to stay in office. And he's been in office a long time. He's up for re-election next year. And I'm sure every cannabis voter out there is going to remember what goes down in the next couple months. Because it's not just this emergency legislation that we're talking about today that's going to be voted on tomorrow with almost no, just we found out late Thursday night about this. But it's also November 19th. There's going to be a vote on, hearings, public hearings, which you all can participate in, and eventually a vote on setting up a tax and regulate scheme for Washington, D.C. for legal adult sales, adult use cannabis businesses. Now, in theory, all the businesses that are being affected by the emergency legislation that will be looked at tomorrow, all of those businesses that could be targeted could become licensed if the Harris rider in Congress is removed and DC Council passes a new law. And that new law, we all can have input on. And there's nothing that says we can't demand cottage industry licenses, low cost licenses, low barrier for entry into this marketplace. So literally every single pop-up vendor, every single home grower who's currently selling, everybody who is in this business, over 100 brick and mortar businesses in Washington, D.C. that are, quote, gray market, every one of them could easily transition to a legal business and should not have to lose their customers. They should not have to lose their reputations. They should not have to shut down. What are they going to do for the next year if they are forced to shut down by this emergency legislation while they're waiting for the licensing from the new ABCA, which is going to regulate cannabis in DC? They won't be handing out those licenses at the earliest until next summer. And they're going to give preference to the medical dispensary businesses. And they already give preference to them in multiple ways in the legislation that Phil Mendelson drafted. So what we have is big cannabis, big pot, going after the little guys here in DC, which this has been a bastion for small-time cannabis operators. No offense to anybody in the cottage industry. I don't mean to say small is bad. Small is good. Yeah. Small is democratic. Yeah. But when you have licenses that right now they consider a micro license for $3,500, that's what it says in the draft legislation. Hey. I say that's too high. Does anybody know how much it costs to get a license to brew beer or wine and sell it at a farmer's market in DC right now? How much? Anyone know? No. It's $300. That's it. $300. Now we could have a 420 license, $420 license that gives you the right to grow it for sale out of your home, up to say, $100,000 in sales, or what is it? What is the right number? We're not sure, but you can have licenses that cap sales. So it's a small business. You only have $100,000 in sales. You don't need a $3,500 license. No. It's a small business. You only have $20,000 in sales. Do you really need a $3,500 license? No. What the politicians don't realize is that so many Americans, so many district residents use cannabis as supplemental income. It is not big business for them. It is small business. They already have another job. They're growing cannabis or they're selling cannabis on the side to make the ends meet because the job they have doesn't pay enough because they're making minimum wage and they got medical bills to pay or they have diapers to buy. People are just getting by because they have this cannabis, they have this plant that they can buy and sell. And because it doesn't belong to the corporate powers. So while we make this transition away from what has been a really kind of grossly unregulated market, because it's true, some operators are selling pesticide-laden weed, and some operators are smuggling in cannabis from out of state that was rejected in those other states for quality, but it's here. And we don't want that. We want higher quality cannabis, but we also want the small businesses to survive. We want them to be able to go. Any dispensary, let's look at Rabbi Khan, Tacoma Wellness. They don't own a cultivation center. They have to go to the 10 cultivation centers in DC and buy from them. Why can't 1,000 district residents pay to get the license and they can get their cannabis wholesale from the same growers? Why is it only going to be a handful of brick and mortar establishments? Now, to the credit of Phil Mendelssohn, and I have to say something nice about people that are screwing you over sometimes, because you have to, because if you lose your own humanity if you can't think there's something good. So there are some good things in that bill, and one of them is there are going to be social equity licenses, and there's going to be preference primarily. I mean, it doesn't say it exactly this way, but if you read it, it sounds like Ward 785. It sounds like where Black residents live in DC, they're going to have an advantage in getting licenses, and there's no cap on licenses. So to the credit of Phil Mendelssohn's bill, he's not planning on telling the government you can only have 20 licenses. There's no cap on alcohol licenses in DC either. So there's some things that they're getting right. And it also says in the bill that there could be new types of licenses created by the commission, but if it's not created here, it can be created later on. So even if we don't get what we want, which are these low-cost cottage industry licenses written into the statute, we can still get it from the regulatory agency later on. So that's actually kind of good. It's kind of leaving the door open to it, to new types of licenses, things they haven't thought of. It envisions public use. There are licenses for that, where it can be on-site consumption. But,
All right, that was Adam Ettinger, the founder of the DC Marijuana Justice Coalition. And he was talking about some of the things they're getting wrong and some of the things they're getting right. Because what we hear is that they're discussing emergency legislation that will prevent a legal pathway to gifting for the sole benefit of dispensaries, big business, big weed business, to capitalize on a market that was built on the backs of Black people will be disastrous. With over 70% of the DC voters in the nation's capital in support of I71 that allow for gifting, this legislation is a vain attempt to ban that. And so joining us here today as members of the I71 committee, Adam Ettinger was talking about how the door is open for a pathway to getting these social equity licenses to have some restorative justice, because there are people of color who still make up the vast majority of people still being arrested for marijuana, still people in prison for marijuana, but then you have big business that wants to come in and capitalize on an industry that was created by those very people, who was then at the same time barred from participating, and they're trying to enforce to continue that now. So join us as members of the I71 committee. I'd like you guys to introduce yourself. We're starting with you, Brother Daryl.
How you doing? I'm Daryl Dawson, affectionately known around the city as Grindstone. My store is Peace in the Air, as well as Grindstone Universal. I'm a clothing designer, as well as the owner of a gifting shop. It's actually a digital music store in which the gift is cannabis. As well as those two things that can be attached to my identity, I am the president of the I71 committee.
My name is Tim Slayton. I'm the treasurer of the I71 committee. I'm also involved with a number of shops in the DC area that also gift for purchases of digital art.
I want to thank you, brothers, for joining We Act Radio here today. And of course, our motto is do something. So I'd like to thank you both for your do somethingness, because the type of feedback the I71 committee can provide to the council, who oftentimes is misinformed or underinformed, is invaluable. Because oftentimes the people who are most affected by their legislation, they don't get to hear from. and the pushback should come from those who are directly impacted by their legislation, and oftentimes those are the people that don't that hesitate to speak up. So I want to thank you both again for doing something and speaking up. All right. So again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, brothers and sisters, friends and enemies, we're here to talk about what the DC Council and what goes on in DC, so goes the country. So people need to pay attention around the world. This is the nation's capital. So you should pay close attention to what's going on here, because it could be coming to a neighborhood near you. Now, I think we have been very good in some of the decriminalization efforts for marijuana in the nation's capital, but this is where the rubber hits the road, so to speak, because who's going to benefit from this new legal industry? Okay, should it be those who have been primarily exposed to the ravages of the drug war, or should it be people who are outside our community come in to profit on it solely? So I want to leave that question to you guys. Where do we go from here? And then I get into the actual nuts and bolts of the legislation. Daryl, you want to take that off?
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, this legislation would upend the DC law passed by 70% of the voters in 2014 that allows for recreational cannabis use. The emergency legislation, it would completely shutter the I-71 compliant businesses and impose unprecedented crippling fines and penalties on the operators, landlords, employees, and neighborhoods of I-71 compliant businesses. This legislation creates a scheme of exclusivity. It makes it exclusive for access to cannabis. And
Exclusivity.
Exclusivity, dog. Hey, it's not early, but here we go. No, but it empowers and it protects a select elite few businesses owners, while at the same time imperiling the livelihoods of the I-71 businesses and our employees. The I-71 committee urges the council members to vote against this emergency act, as it will peel back very little the protections that I-71 offers to compliant small businesses that will result in financial struggle for many employees of these businesses, and a huge percentage of whom are Black and people of color. It would also debilitate the efforts of these small businesses and individuals that we make on behalf of the DC community in the form of mutual initiatives, food and coat drives, sponsorships of local events, and general support of the neighborhoods that they reside in. Neighborhoods who are not currently complaining or saying that this is an emergency. And so we're in full support of efforts to uplift the patients and individuals who use and are in need of medical cannabis in the medical marijuana industry in DC. But unfortunately, this legislation does so much more harm than good. And sadly, in many ways, it sets DC back in an older style of enforcement practices used to send the so-called unwanted businesses and individuals packing away from our city. Hundreds, if not thousands, of DC residents will lose their jobs. And this act, if this act is approved, so we're really rallying for no votes.
Well, what people need to understand, for those outside our community, DC allows people to give away small amounts of marijuana with some creative entrepreneurs, and we have a creative economy here. 202 Creates have used to open stores where they sell stickers and art and give away marijuana with those purchases. That is what the issue is here today. DC Council Chairman in Washington, DC, we have a 13-member council and a mayor, and the chairman is the head of that council. He makes number 13, and he is proposing emergency legislation tomorrow to ban that by threatening. First, they have already tried to criminalize the use of that. That was beat down. That was taken out. And you saw Adam Edginger speaking at a rally here in Washington, D.C. in front of the mayor's building on Pennsylvania Avenue, the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue. And where we were successfully did defeat that. And now they're coming back. We're trying to implement fines of $30,000 against the building owner. Some people call the landlords. We do not do landlords. There's no laws over the land here. We're not serfs. It's not medieval Europe. It's a new damn day. Okay, but we also need to talk about how the Congress, because DC doesn't have voting rights, and we're still a plantation subservient to the whims of a racist Congress, by the way, because the Republicans are just that, who are prohibiting from those licenses being given out. Anyone want to take that? Tim, do you want to take that or address from your personal standpoint on where you think we stand?
Yes, and just to speak on that, so people can kind of understand, as Adam was saying earlier, there's something called the Harris Rider that's been included in the budget for Congress since the I-71 passed here in DC. So just so people understand that the Harris Rider basically prohibits the city council from spending money to legislate or to set up a recreational market for any Schedule I drug or any of that. So even if anything happens, so if they shut all the shops down, there's now just a time where they could pass legislation to create those legal markets, create those licenses. But as of now, that can't happen. So this is another reason that it's very detrimental for them to do that, because there's not even a transition set up. So what they're going to do is shut down a bunch of businesses predominantly owned by Black people, employing a lot of Black people in the city, bringing tourism to the city, bringing other money to the city. And if this passes, all that's just gone. And now you're left with the 8 shops that are medical, and everyone just needs to vote no on this as soon as possible.
Well, you know, we don't have information on the straw poll from the council, but the last time this happened, they did not have the votes.
Right.
But I fear that something may have changed. Some backroom deals may have been made. They have been paid lobbyists working diligently on this issue, because there's a lot of money at stake here. You just referred to 8 dispensaries, eight for all of the marijuana in the entire nation's capital. Just the sheer concept of that is ludicrous. So you actually think that everybody's going to go to 8 joints? Even if they were to do that, can you think about the chaos that would ensue? But they just counting money. They're just counting money. And what really gets me is the audacity for them to assert as if there was no marijuana industry before I-71. That all of a sudden the weed industry just dropped on the I-71, and therefore they Christopher Columbus this whole thing, and they claiming it for themselves. They planting a flag in DC and they claiming it for themselves. And because they're not able to give out these licenses, they're not even waiting to debate this even further. Hence, emergency legislation. And one of the things that Adam pointed out in his speech at the rally last year was that there's no limit on liquor license in this city, you know, but there's a proliferation of liquor stores in Black communities. But there's no problem with that. There's no emergency legislation to address that. But there's a limit, 8 for licenses for marijuana. This is what we should be resisting. Yes, sir.
Right. So all right. So I'm born and raised in Oakland, California, and I've been in DC for almost 30 years now. And I saw how California got this wrong. And so California, I would say they overregulated what the dispensaries were able to do. And in their overregulation, they awakened the Black market. And not only did they do that, but they crippled the dispensaries that were open with their taxes so much that most of the dispensaries are operating in the red. And so we need to learn from the business model that's out there. And that was the original one. Now, they had it right by not making it criminal to possess, but the way that they have granted access to the people who want to get it, it doesn't benefit the owners of the places. And I think right now the main problem with medical is the fact that medical would like to be the only ones. They want to be those 8 or those 9, but that doesn't serve the customer. So there's a sweet spot somewhere in between where both sides can work together, but that is not reflected in this bill.
Now, one of the things that is reflected in the bill that we can agree on is that, okay, they're removing the doctor's medical card requirement to patronize the dispensaries. But even the dispensaries themselves have openly acknowledged that during the pandemic, that 40% of their lost revenue was directly attributed to these expired medical marijuana cards that was that incurred a backlog due to COVID-19 and things being shut down and limited hours of availability and what have you. And they was afraid to honor anyone's expired card during that time period. None of which has anything to do with gifting, right? But they're being greedy because they want to shut everyone else out of the picture and have this all to themselves. Let's be very clear. This is about big business taking advantage of small business. That's how Amazon started, by gobbling up small businesses. That's why the largest businesses are Amazon and Walmart, who gobble up small businesses. And we have to speak out against this. Now, from your time with the I71 committee, it's been in existence for some time now. You had a wonderful launch event. What has been the feedback that you guys have gotten since you formalized the I71 committee? Because there was a council member there at the launch who's in support of the work you guys have been doing. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, we've gained momentum from lots of people who are interested in becoming a part of the I71 committee who feel exposed in the market that they exist in. And I think that that's I mean, just considering that, just the short duration of time that we've existed, that's a positive sign for us, because my whole purpose was to invoke unity. And so the fact that the fact that we were able to help people who have been affected and people who are being affected or afraid of being exposed are attracted to us, we've gained momentum, and that's positive. And, after all, these are DMV residents. And so one impact of this not just the Harris rider, but one impact of this emergency vote is that hundreds, if not thousands, of DC residents are going to lose their jobs. And I think that it is the responsibility of the city council to make sure that the loss of jobs isn't something that an emergency vote invokes, because like Tim said, there's no transition plan. Some level of chaos will ensue. If not in just individuals' lives, you will see like a community issue of relative panic. There will be an effect of this that's not being addressed.
Yes, and to speak on what you're saying with that, Daryl, like, I just feel like not only will that happen, there will be chaos. I just want to speak on kind of the same note that a lot of times I feel like it's the cannabis market here is taking kind of a hit from the legislative and the government side, that all the crime in the city is somehow being attributed to these shops, which is absolutely wrong. I don't understand how you can attribute a carjacking to a I71 gifting shop. It just does not make a lot of sense. So I think part of that is, them adding weight, to the anchor to try to sink this in with the bill. But just like that's wrong, Chairman Mendelson is wrong. We are, law-abiding citizens that own businesses that give people jobs. And, like you said, shutting it down is just literally going to cause chaos and put a lot of people out of work that were already struggling because of the pandemic. So the I-71 thing kind of opened up a lot of jobs and opportunities for people that didn't have those before.
Exactly. Now, if you guys were in charge, what would you like to see happen? Because oftentimes we're very clear on what we're against, but oftentimes we are not as clear on what we are for. So what are you guys for in terms of proposing legislation if you were able to write it?
Well, I think that I would like to see the certification of businesses be granted based on certain qualifications that we've yet to that we've yet to come to an agreement on, or even it hasn't even been proposed. But once you meet a certain standard of criteria, then you too are able to have a license. And I think in a free enterprise market, it really doesn't matter, just like a convenience store. It really doesn't matter how many people are there. It matters on who can survive or not, who is the most creative, who is the most attractive, who can have the people come to them more. And so I think that there should be, given the fact that there's no violence, like the city hasn't become increasingly violent. So given the fact that everything is as it's going, I think there should be licensing and taxes being paid. That would be one thing. I assume that there will be a fee for the license. And I think that as long as you're able to do that, may the best person win. And not even win, it's rule enough for everybody. So I think it's a win for everybody when no one is left out.
Yeah, I mean, the one of the tenets of capitalism here in America, they love to espouse all the time is a free market. But when it comes to Black people participating in an upwardly mobile fashion within that market, then the rules seem to change. Tim, I'm sorry, I didn't want to step on you. Did you have a response?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, definitely everything Daryl said, open market for sure. I think an easy barrier to entry. I would not want, like Adam was saying, if you are only gonna make $100,000, why is the license, $4,000? So I think, a low cost for a license is important from a treasury standpoint. I also think that making sure that at some point, obviously with the Harris rider and everything in place, this can't happen, but some language in there so that, I'm sure the taxes are going to be paid. So at the same time, banking and all of those type of monetary effects should be very easy to do without barrier, even though it's a cannabis, business.
So do we agree that the licensing fee that they were offering at $3,500 is excessive? So
yes.
Adam mentioned a $420 for $420 for a license here in Washington, D.C. Do you think the vast majority of people would be willing to go legit, as they say, if they were afforded the opportunity to have a legal business, wouldn't have to worry about police, wouldn't have to worry about the business being shut down or raided, and all it would cost them is $420 and follow some simple rules of compliance? Do you think the vast majority of people within the gifting industry would be willing to participate under those parameters?
I do think that the vast majority of people would be willing to go that way. And I mean, after all, we're in full support of the efforts to uplift patients and individuals who are in need of medical cannabis in the medical industry. And so I think that if we had a clear path like that, people would be willing to go legal if they entered it. But at the end of this, what this is a business. So just because there's an easy barrier of entry doesn't mean that everybody knows how to run a business. And so I think that those who are qualified to run businesses will be with it. I think those who are unqualified to run businesses will weed themselves out. But I think that, the city would win with that $420 check that they would get from every business, and I don't know if that would be a periodic update, kind of like a filing or something like that, but it would be some way.
Most likely would be a filing situation or annual situation or something like that.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's money to be made, and there are patients and customers to serve. And I think that everybody would win except for those with those selfish desires. And we so Chairman Mendelson, he said he had it all wrong. And we took it for its face value when he said that if the Harris rider is removed, he wants to allow for recreational cannabis sales in the city with a strong commitment to social equity. But these types of actions show no energy towards social equity at all. And it's unfortunate that the resident and business owner of DC is constantly required to see through the tricks just to survive and employ other DC residents. And that's where we are now.
Well, Chairman Phil Mendelson, this is election year, and we have some people that's on the council that's running for mayor. We have some people who are seeking other offices, and I think that this may be a political football for a lot of people to look like they getting tough, especially at the behest of big businesses that may be contributing to their campaigns. The reality is that they respond to those who support their campaigns. And where is the initiative for them to go with 70% of DC voters, because
Right.
if those 70% of DC voters are not speaking up, if those 70% of DC voters are not being brought to bear, then what other way are they going to respond? So we have to remind them, that the vast majority of people in this city support what we're talking about, support social equity when it comes to marijuana. And we have to remind them of that. But hopefully that 70% will show up tomorrow and contact their council members and let these people know there should be consequences and repercussions for criminals to continue to criminalize small businesses and people of color in Washington, D.C. But how do we make that message loud and clear to them? I leave it to Brother Tim and Brother Darrell. What is your input on that?
Well, I think
go ahead, Darrell. I was just going to piggyback on what you were saying about the number, the 70% of DC voters were in support of this. And it just kind of speaks volumes to the fact that he put this emergency legislation in effect on the very same day that the MORE Act passed in the House of Representatives, which basically in the House of Representatives made marijuana not illegal federally. I mean, we hasn't passed it in the Senate yet, which I don't know if that'll happen, but it just speaks volumes to how what you were saying about people trying to show that they are a powerhouse as far as, big business goes. So, because why would you do that the same day that it was voted, against in the House? So, I think people will, like you said, definitely have to call. You definitely have to send emails, and let them know that your voice is real and that you are one of these district residents that we're not going to stand for this.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, and even as a non-participant in this market at all, whoever is in touch with someone who is Black, Hispanic, or whoever is adjacent to that, or even if that is you and you're not attached to this market, know that we did a demographic survey, and 60% of this workforce is Black or Hispanic in this market. And so that goes from, say, May 15th, everybody being employed, these 60%, to May 16th, these people not being employed. And I'm not sure of the actual number, but that's a lot of people who you can just send an email, make some calls, be part of the voices heard, and you can make a difference in this vote tomorrow.
And we need to find out, the real straw poll, and we're going to make sure that we advertise who voted for this madness, and hopefully there will be some consequences, repercussions when their time comes up in voting. The only person that is impervious is Mary Chey, who I personally believe is the most racist council member on DC Council, representing Ward 3, the whitest ward in Washington, D.C., who blames Black people for virtually everything. But I like what Tim has mentioned, and how they was trying to scapegoat violence in the city on gifting, because anytime they want to criminalize Black people, all they got to do is use a few buzzwords, and we know what they are, and that's what they use. And but I would like to think that we are living in a new day. I like to think that because of the cries of Black Lives Matter and the support for that will actually wean some of that racist tendency that they have been banking on. But We will find out tomorrow. This vote is taking place Tuesday, April the 5th. Today is April 4th. I need to apologize. I did not dedicate this show at the outset to Bruce Johnson, a great journalist here in Washington, D.C., who just succumbed to cancer. I don't want to put his business out, but he was supportive of this issue, a long time supporter of this issue, if you feel me. Okay, now, but we want to make sure that people realize that Alice Walker said this, that the greatest power is convincing people they don't have any. And you simply can send an email, pick up a phone and make a call and let folks know where you stand on this. You'll be surprised at just how far that goes, because they think that one email represents dozens of people, that one phone call represents dozens of people. And if they got a few dozen calls and a few dozen emails on this, that might be just enough to sway them from the check that's been provided to them at the behest of lobbyists for these 8 dispensaries that are standing to monopolize the medical.
And you know what? And come on, I also want to say, when it comes to buzzwords, another word that we need to move away from in terms of buzzwords that come with stigma is marijuana. We are now dealing with cannabis, and marijuana has forever had marijuana and weed have both had just interpretations to others that allowed them to mentally categorize it. Cannabis is it's not a new word. I mean, it's a scientific breakdown of the plant in terms of the nomenclature, but what it does, it makes our stance have a face that it has yet to have. So I just want everybody to try.
Well, you bring up a great point, and we do need to sanitize the language, because the reality is that marijuana has a racist history. This whole issue started out in racist jargon. They used the term marijuana because it sounded more Mexican, and because they were trying to scare white people, because Mexicans will go loco if they smoke weed, and if those and then next thing your white daughter be dating jazz musicians, and then these cats won't know their place, because they smoking this marijuana that makes them crazy, and that is a great point. And so we move forward with the cannabis industry to chart a new day. And so we're asking that they hit the brakes on this emergency legislation, and let's wait for the outcome of the federal legislation to remove this ban on the rider, so that we can start issuing these social equity licenses. That's pretty much where our consensus are, gentlemen.
Yes, and like you were saying, it's Mendelsohn. He is in support of removing the Harris rider. So that's another reason to me. It's very interesting. Like you were saying, it kind of speaks to how this is obviously a political, show your muscle powerhouse move, because he's in support of it, and I would feel like the majority of the council would be, because at that point it can be taxed, and the city will make money, and it can be a legal market, and everything is great. But I don't understand this. What's the emergency that why you have to shut everyone down? It doesn't make any sense. So
it's working backwards if you were talking about social equity.
Right. So, that's why it's clear that this is, like you're saying, it's a political move. And, we as DC voters need to stand up and let them know that we will not allow this to do this and jeopardize 60% of, our employees are Black, and put them without a job just because they want to make a political move. And it's just not right.
It's definitely not right. It's definitely not right. We got a few minutes left in the program. Now, last year, we organized the rally in front of the mayor's building on the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue. And the only reason we're not doing that again this time, because it's a 6% chance of rain tomorrow, and we don't have the resources to provide a tent covering for everyone there tomorrow. And that's the only reason we're not coming for them tomorrow, which is why we here today to discuss this. And this video is going to be sent to every council member. But I want to make this a little bit more personal, guys, because sometimes, you know, people hide behind that title, you know, DC Council, you know, DC, but they're people. There's 13 of them. So if you know, this is We Act Radio, we call people out. So I'm gonna read some names that comprise the DC Council, and I want you brothers to vote up or down on your prediction, whether they, as they would say, either for us or against us. All right, y'all hip to that? All right. So
well let me tell you, first of all,
go ahead, brother.
Wait, hold on. First of all, I'm not as politically inclined as you are to know who's who, but I know some of the names. So if I just flatline,
well, you know, you can do it like we can keep it 100. You can abstain if you don't have an informed vote. So I don't want you to guess.
Okay.
It's just
right.
Your gut feeling. Your gut feeling.
All right.
All right. All right. So we go. Top of the list, Anita Bonds, Councilwoman at Large. Up or down? I'm saying that she's going against it.
From what I hear, I believe she's against it as well. So that is one that we would definitely need to send those emails to and make those phone calls.
We got to reach out to Sister Anita Bonds. Daryl, you abstain or you up or down on that? Okay.
I'm honestly not familiar enough. You know?
Okay, she's up for re-election right now. She's a very contested election. Unfortunately, you have like the Wu-Tang Clan running to challenge her. So it's numerically impossible for 8 to 9 people of the Wu-Tang Clan to split the opposition vote to unseat an incumbent, you know. So that's why we need the ranked voting, so people can rank their choices, and that's how you get the person that has the vast majority of support. So just want to put that out there. Message. All right. Christina Henderson. I think that's a round of ups on that one.
Yeah.
Christina Henderson. Yep. Councilwoman at Large as well. She was there at the I71 committee opening the panel. Elisa Silverman. We're going up or down with Elisa. I'm gonna say up with Elisa. I'm gonna say up with Elisa. You know, she's one of the deciding votes.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
But Elisa gets it. Elisa gets it in a lot of the issues. You might be surprised. She and Trayon had a big tiff, and I like the way they squashed it and had some restorative justice. So I think I'm a gamble that Lisa Silverman would be for small businesses and having a social equity lens, a racial equity lens in terms of this issue. Okay, guys, we have a mayoral candidate, Robert White. We're going to go up or down on Robert. I'm going to claim that Robert will go the right way on this. I'm going to claim that Robert White will go the right way on this. Robert, don't make a fool out of me. All right. All right. And we have Brianna Nadeau. Now, Brianna Nadeau, I just got to give her a shout out because she's one of the, and along with Robert White, were one of the first people to join the Don't View DC campaign. Like the first people to show up, and they showed up in the rain. We actually did that we did that one in the rain. So because of what I know about Brianna Nadeau, I'm going to claim that she's going to be up. I'm going to claim that she's going to be up. That's a big stretch. That's a big stretch because we kind of
definitely has an email. She definitely has an email from me in her inbox.
All right, good. And she'll get another email with this interview. But I'm going to claim Brianna because she was the author of a harmonious living bill that I'm a big supporter of. And we need to make sure that we understand that we're not necessarily demonizing people, except for Mary Chase. I'm demonizing Mary because I think Mary's racist, and I said it. All right, but everybody else, I can work with you because sometimes you'll agree with them on one issue and you'll disagree with them on another issue. So you can't really, shut them down because you can work with them on this and you can't work with them on that. And you have to be flexible. Even with Phil, I've been in parties with Phil. I've had drinks with Phil. Phil know me, we cool, but we disagree on this a lot. So Brianna, we're gonna roll with that. That was my vote. All right, Tim, what you thinking on Brianna? Don't let my vote for sway yours, brother.
No, not at all. I wouldn't do that at all. But I'm with Daryl. She definitely has a few emails from me in her inbox. So okay. I'm hoping for the best. I like to speak things into existence. I believe in that. So I'm gonna say she is gonna vote on our side because I want her to.
Okay, and my pen would not. And my pen is not working at the very moment I'm trying to tally our votes. on where we are. Okay, but right now we're looking at it's like spades. We're looking at 2 in the possible, maybe 3 in the possible right so far. Okay. Brooke Pinto. I don't know Brooke that well. So I'm gonna say no. I don't know Brooke that well at all.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
don't know
familiar either, but I definitely sent her a couple of emails as well. So, you know,
Okay.
like I said, I'm gonna speak positive hopes.
You're gonna speak
You know?
positive. Well, Brooke, I don't know. So I hope that she do the right thing. So we're gonna reach out to people. We're gonna reach out to her. And then of course Mary Che. Y'all already know. Y'all already know. You know.
Yeah, I think she's, you know, she's definitely on Phil's side. So
Yeah,
I think they in the pocket.
Mary's on that BS. You know what I'm saying? All right, Janice Lewis George. That's my homegirl. I'm gonna claim
yes.
She's up on it. She's the first person I donated financially to the campaign. I gave her a Harriet Tubman 20. I stamped Harriet Tubman on it, and she took some tubs.
Love it.
Okay. Now Kenyon McDuffie. Now Kenyon McDuffie is a good dude. We had some problems over the years with some development, but I think as Attorney General he would be a good choice. But he's on the fence with this. I get the sense he's on the fence with this because I texted him about this and he ain't responded yet. Usually, if it's to the affirmative, he'll be quick to say, you know. So he's on the fence with this, and so we might have to push Kenyon a little bit. So I'm gonna have to abstain on Kenyon because I really don't know. I think he's on the fence.
Text him again.
He's on the fence. You know?
Yeah, I was gonna say
he's gonna get this video.
Yeah, send him to him again. I'm with you on that. I think, you know, people, like you said, it's a political time. It's a re-election time, and people will sway with other people. So, you know,
he has a lot of variables he has to deal with. I understand that, and you know that support system may be in need. His campaign might be needing a support system.
Exactly. So please reach out again, and I want everyone that's listening to this reach out and let him know how you feel as a small business and you know, an employee of an I71 shop, or you know, just a citizen.
Now, Kenyon, I'm endorsing you for Attorney General. Don't make a fool out of me. Okay. All right. Now, Charles Allen. Charles Allen is probably probably one of my favorite white dudes to ever serve on DC Council, because I saw him at a church. I'm trying to remember the context. He was in a church and there was another killing and someone challenged him. I think it wasn't the grieving mother, but it was someone else that was grieving, that put their finger in his face and challenged him. Say, how are, you know, the audacity for you to be here because you haven't done nothing to stop this violence. You have, you know, and I thought it was a unfair attack on him, but he didn't respond. He didn't try to have her removed. He sat there, shut up, and listened to this grieving person and heard them out, and then empathized with them and apologized. And he says he wants to hear more from the community on what they should be doing to minimize violence in our community. I just love the way he handled it, because he could have went the other way. You know, I really love the way he handled it. And he has typically on his voting record been pretty decent. So I'm going to claim that Charles Allen is going to do the right thing. But I don't have any, you know, that's just a gut feeling. I don't have anything to base that on. That's not an informed decision. I'll just let y'all know that I have a sweet spot for Charles Allen. So I'm going to claim that one. You guys, what's your vote on Charles Allen? He's Ward 6.
Yeah, I don't know.
Newly expanded Ward 6.
Yeah, I'm gonna, you know, this time actually I will kind of sway with you. I've heard good things, and I just hope that he would make the right decision this time for the people. He seems like a people for the people guy, and I'm gonna go yes with him, because I hope that he will recognize that this is an important issue for the community.
Okay, y'all gotta. I should have definitely categorized this, that, you know, going against the chairman is a tall order, because if you want your stuff to get approved when it's time for you to propose stuff, you kind of like want to be sweet on a chairman. So we gotta remember that as well. I'm Daryl. You abstain, or you gotta.
This isn't a character judgment on the man, but it's I do not expect Phil Mendelssohn to be with this because he proposed it.
Oh, that was Charles Allen. That was a different white guy. You confusing white guy.
Oh, okay.
No,
okay,
only white guys look alike to you.
No. When you said chairman, I went there. No,
I understand that they naturally are inclined to go along with their chairman because he has so much sway over the council, obviously. And then we have Vincent Gray, former mayor Vincent Gray. I'm fond of Vincent Gray. I think he was robbed of the mayoral election because they put this dirt out on him a few weeks before the election, and it was unfounded. And then the charges were withdrawn after the election, so that was like a setup. So I do acknowledge that. But having said all of that, I don't think Gray is with this one. I think he's rolling with Phil on this one. So
unfortunately, I think he is. But I would love for him to change his mind, knowing how the people feel about it. So come on,
man, Gray. I know he has some problem with his feet. You can use some marijuana, but Brother Gray, we need you to join the cannabis community, okay, and the small businesses, okay, particularly Ward 7. Daryl, you rolling with that one? Vincent Gray, former mayor Vincent Gray.
I'll be honest, that's surprising, but it's not like I had information otherwise, but I was just thinking off the gut feeling that I didn't know that was the case, but that's unfortunate.
Yeah. And then finally, we have Treyon White. We all know Treyon is going to roll.
Yeah, Treyon's all day.
Trey all day. Team. All right. So it looks like an even split, bro. I don't know who the deciding vote was going to be. They didn't have the votes last year, but in order for him to have the kahunas to resubmit this year, it seems like something has changed. Somebody flipped. So, and as Marion Barry said, DC politics is very simple. You only have to be able to count to 7. You only got to be able to count to 7 on a council of 13 people. But we got 6 in the possible from what my tally is up here.
Yeah.
We got 6
well, look, on an emergency vote, you only need 5.
Right.
Flip it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. In an emergency vote, you only need 5 to pass. So you ain't got to count to 7.
You need 9. You need 9 to pass. You need 9 to pass, but we need to have 5 in order to flip that. In order to knock it off.
Emergency. Oh, okay. So I misspoke. So you saying on an emergency, it takes 9 for an emergency legislation to pass.
Right.
So the bar is actually higher.
For them, yeah.
Yeah, the bar is actually higher. So we got 6. So we counted 6 in the possible. So I'm wondering, who do we getting wrong? You know what I'm saying? Who are we getting wrong? Is it Elisa Silverman? Is it Brianna Nadeau? Is it Kenya McDuffie? Who are we getting wrong? Is it Robert White? So I think the verdict is out for Elisa Silverman, Robert White, Brianna Nadeau, and Kenya McDuffie. Those are the 4 that's the possibles. And so if those in our listening community, if you wanted to call, I would urge you to call Lisa Silverman office at 202-724-7772. Lisa Silverman, 202-724-7772. Brianna Nadeau, 202-724-8181. Brianna Nadeau, 202-724-8181. Mayoral candidate Robert White, who is in need of a transformational policy if he expects to overcome the insurmountable challenge of unseating an incumbent when multiple people are running for that office, splitting the opposition vote. Robert White office, 202-724-8174, 724-8174. Brooke Pinto, 724-8058. Brooke Pinto, 724-8058. And Kenya McDuffie, the Attorney General candidate, and I would support him as Attorney General. Please don't make a fool out of me, Kenya. We will be calling your office later today. 724-8028. 724-8028. So those are the possibles. But this is our time for today, and I hope that we have impressed upon those who are uninformed about this issue. So if there's any stone that has been left unturned, gentlemen, this is the time to address it in our closing comments. If there's anything we missed, or our closing comments to summarize and reiterate what we want to make sure the council doesn't miss when we send this interview to their offices shortly.
All right, we urge all council members to vote no and vote against this emergency act. We urge all council members to also keep their stance, if that has previously been their stance, on making social equity a priority. I think that us discussing this today is also very ironic because it's April 4th. And we all know that 54 years ago to this day, Martin Luther King died of a gunshot wound. And this is the time that social equity it needs to come to fruition. So I urge all of them to vote no tomorrow. It will affect the population of DC negatively.
And I would just like to say, definitely, everyone vote no, like you said, Daryl. And I want everyone that's listening to this to make sure that you reach out and make that phone call, send those emails. I know it doesn't seem like it's a lot, but just like he was saying, to them, that one email is 12 votes, at least. That represents, your one email represents so much more. So I just urge everyone to take that stance and make that call or send that email and let them know that your voice is here and you need to be heard.
Absolutely, and I want to thank Daryl for bringing up the significance of April 4th. Not only was Dr. Martin Luther King assassinated by the government on April 4th, 1968, but he also gave a speech April 4th, 1967, that spoke out against the war, and that act caused the government to denounce him. It caused even Black churches to denounce him. Okay, and he knew what he was getting himself into, and he rose to the occasion. So here's the man that sacrificed his life to have restorative justice and social equity in this country. And some of us are not willing to do anything, not alone risk our life or even our lifestyle. And this is an opportunity and a challenge for us to do something, because he was killed defending the rights of sanitation workers. Okay, garbage men, the least of us, as the society would say. And so the least that we can do is to rise to the occasion and do something. All right, and that's the mantra here at We Act Radio. I want to thank the I71 committee for the work they've been doing. The DC Council has not made any efforts to bring legacy entrepreneurs into the regulated market. They have not created a pathway for them to go legit, as we say. They now create a pathway for them to get these social equity licenses. And until they do that, they should not be allowed to do this. Because Chairman Phil Mickelson is still relying on drug war rhetoric that claims recreational so-called marijuana, as we now refer to as the cannabis industry, to solely be responsible for crime in the district. I don't think those racist dog whistles are working anymore. So we asking everybody in the sound of our voices to contact DC council members right now to tell them that you strongly oppose their efforts to close gifting stores at the behest of 8 dispensaries who want to take over and monopolize the entire cannabis industry in Washington, D.C. Brother Gerald, Brother Tim, I want y'all brothers to stay focused, stay strong, stay woke. And I look forward to join arms with you again tomorrow as we monitor this. Hopefully we can get some sort of watch party together, and we can make sure that we let these folks know that they are being watched. And as an election year is upon us, there are going to be consequences and repercussions if they do not support what over 70% of the DC voters support here in the nation's capital. I want to thank y'all again for joining me here today. And I look forward to seeing you guys again tomorrow, and if not sooner. Talk to you in the next time. All right. And again, rest in peace to Bruce Johnson, DC's own, great journalist, and I wish him to travel well, and my condolences to his family. He unfortunately succumbed to cancer, and so I want to dedicate this program to the memory of Bruce Johnson. All right, one love, peace and blessings, y'all. Stay safe, stay strong, stay woke.